welcome to the I Teach Myself podcast. My name is Matthew Niman. This is episode 2. What can your car teach us about cybersecurity? So to start off with, I think it's kind of safe to go over the safety features of a vehicle. My car, I love driving my car. It's big, it's Subaru, and it's fun to drive. It's nice and relaxing, but it's got just a whole ton of safety features, from seat belts, turn signals, the windshield, crumple zones, roll cage, passive restraint system. The seats are designed so that they stay in one place in a crash. The steering column is designed to collapse. Crumple zones, where if I were to get into an accident, it would attempt to slow down the impact. All of these things, and there are things to prevent me from getting into accidents. I've got a crash detection system. I've got radar that warns me if a car ahead has stopped. I've got proximity sensors if I'm going to back into something. But then there's, other active stuff like headlights, and I already said turn signals, but windshield wipers, all of this is designed to keep me safe as the driver, which is fantastic. And it's kind of important to know exactly how this stuff came to be, because it can explain a lot about the current situation in cybersecurity. So to start off with, the seatbelt was originally designed in the 1800s by a guy named George Cayley. He was originally trying to stop himself from falling out of his glider, because in the 1800s, people were crazy and did things. Basically, everybody was an inventor, just like today, everybody's a podcaster. But everybody was an inventor in the 1800s, and this guy was like, I want to stop myself from falling out of my glider because it hurts every time I do it. Small wonder. So he created the seatbelt, which was just a rope basically strewn across his lap. And it wasn't until the 1855, when an American named Edward J. Claghorn patented the first seat belt. This is what we would commonly refer to as just a 2-point restraint system. It's the one that's in airplanes. And he designed this originally to restrain folks when they were in taxis in New York, because New York taxis are insanity, and they have been for forever. So, and these were horse-drawn carriages, obviously not vehicles, not cars, but horse-drawn carriages for New York City taxis. Up throughout history, throughout the development of the vehicle, the seatbelt has kind of been an interesting and really I don't know what you would call it, but basically there were a lot of people who didn't want a seatbelt in their vehicle, and it was a hotly debated safety precaution. Like, was it a waste of resources? Was it really didn't? People didn't feel like it really did anything to prevent accidents or to stop them from getting hurt. And it was really a big thing, because like in the early 1900s, with the original vehicles, with the original cars, they were fast comparatively to what people were used to. They were very hard to control, because they basically put things together with spit, twine, and horsehair, and the vehicles were basically death traps. They were that way for a long time. In 1920s, 1930s, there was a lot of investigation as to how to prevent as many deaths from people driving cars. And then that progressed into the government and a lot of folks trying to figure out how to save people. And it really wasn't until 1955, when Volvo introduced the 3-point harness system, that it really became consideration to incorporate safety into the vehicle. There had been a lot of redesigns of vehicles to try to get them to be safer, a lot of attempts to get like seat belts and other things into vehicles, but there was still just a lot of resistance to it. And it really wasn't until 1955 when Volvo released the 3-point harness system, the seatbelt that we usually know about today, that people really started to think about safety in vehicles. And from there, it kind of ballooned, because now we have different aspects of safety. Like I mentioned, we've got the airbag, which can be life-saving in an accident. We have pedestrian crash avoidance systems, and those had been in design since the 20s. In fact, there was an early design where if a pedestrian was potentially going to get run over by a vehicle, the vehicle would deploy a net that would catch the pedestrian. Wouldn't have saved Marty McFly, but it would have produced, might have saved folks as well. And so all of this has been in development. People have been trying to make vehicles safer for forever. But as I mentioned before, there was a ton of resistance, and there still is a modicum of resistance. You can buy today seatbelt inserts so that you can fool your car into thinking that you've buckled your seatbelt. There are restraint systems that people can incorporate into their vehicle that make it so that it's not as uncomfortable to wear a seatbelt, I guess. I'm not entirely sure. People dig out the airbag to store drugs. I don't know. There's a ton of stuff that people do. And a lot of it is people think that they know better, And damn government ain't going to tell me what I cannot do. If I'm going to crash my car, I'm going to do it. Anyways, how does this relate to cybersecurity? Well, cybersecurity relates to the safety aspects of your car because they're supposed to, the concept of cybersecurity is to keep you safe, is to keep your environment safe and to keep your data safe. And one of the concepts that we practice or try to practice in the security industry is defense in depth. This is also known as planning for failure. This is multi-layered defense. You can name it a ton of other things, but really the concept is that when you're implementing cybersecurity tools and cybersecurity concepts, you're implementing them in such a way that if one should fail, that's not going to cause you to just be destroyed. That's not going to cause your data to just go away. So there's a lot of stuff that we implement or we try to implement. And in a mature IT environment, you have policies and procedures regarding business continuity. You have policies and procedures designed around incident response. And you provide those to folks to show them what to do in an emergency. But then you do things to prevent the attack to begin with. So you have a firewall, you have antivirus, you have an MDR, an EDR, you have a SIM to detect data, you have alerting systems to identify when stuff is going on. You have all this incorporated into your environment. And the point is not that one single piece is ever the full picture. You are always looking to incorporate more and more and more to prevent things from getting attacked. As an example, if you find a vulnerability within your environment, a lot of folks will look at a vulnerability and go, oh, okay, this vulnerability is only a problem if somebody is already in my network. So because I don't have to expose this to the internet and I'm not exposing this vulnerability directly out there, I really don't have to patch it, which can and cannot be true. So for instance, one of the things that we need to take and consider when thinking about defense in depth is with the vulnerability risk management system, we need to understand that just because somebody might get into your network, might have to just get into your network to leverage an exploit, that doesn't mean that it's safe, because then all somebody has to do is get into your network. That's the barrier. And as soon as they get into the network and they detect that vulnerability, they can then exploit it to do things. And so there's a lot of different ways to think about this and to incorporate defense in depth. So vulnerability and risk management is a big one, because a lot of folks will think, oh yeah, I only have to patch the things that matter in this very small and slim aspect of cybersecurity. And so, one of the things that we get resistance to when we try to incorporate more things in cybersecurity is, well, isn't my email filter protecting me from that? I don't have to worry about an antivirus. I don't have to worry about getting managed detection and response system. That's all stuff I don't actually need because I got an email filter. That's enough, right? And that kind of perspective, it can be dangerous. I'm not saying that it's necessarily incorrect whole heart, because from an aspect of dollars versus effectiveness, you do have to do some analysis there. And for a small business, some dude who only works on, landscaping and only basically uses his phone for all of this probably doesn't need a whole lot. He probably only needs that email filter to keep himself from getting spammed a whole bunch and losing his business that way. Yeah, there's that can be potentially right. But, one of the things that I run into a whole lot is, well, I don't need vulnerability management because I pay for cybersecurity insurance. My cybersecurity insurance will cover me if I should get hacked. And that is horrible. I mean, awful. The example I use is, man, if you are driving your car, you're like, I don't give a shit if I get into an accident because I got insurance. I got automobile insurance. I'm covered if I crash. I'm covered if I kill somebody. Man, it don't matter, because that's bullshit. You care. You drive your car responsibly. At least I hope you do. God, but it's the same concept of cybersecurity. You don't just have something out there and that's your only point of failure. So we plan for failure in cybersecurity by having multiple layers of safety. We have passwords because we need them. We have multi-factor authentication because if they get a password, then there's at least another layer of authentication they need to bypass. We have firewalls, but even with firewalls, we have an external firewall, and then we have a firewall on our computer to keep people from attacking us from inside of the network. We do vulnerability management to patch those vulnerabilities in case somebody gets inside the network, and then they can leverage that vulnerability to then exist inside the network. So this all ties in together because just like with safety features of your car, everything's designed to keep you from getting hurt and getting into an accident. Now, just like with an accident, some are never going to be unavoidable. You can be the most careful driver, you can have the most secure network, but you are still going to have an accident in the real world. It's going to happen. It might be a fender bender, or you might have a small email compromise on your environment, but you're going to get the bad thing is going to happen. You have to accept that as a user. And so we implement these other security tools to prevent it from getting worse. And you have these other safety features to prevent it from getting worse. A fender bender 5-mile-per-hour crash probably won't hurt you too much, but you probably want all of those added safety features just in case. Whiplash is a big concern, just like you want to have MDR on your environment to prevent that ransomware attack, because that bad on a single device, but you still want it so you don't have to worry about it. The other thing is that even inside of an accident, even with an accident, it's a serious deal, because with a small accident involved with another person, the right thing, the ethical thing, is to report it to the police. So that way your insurances can cover it and do the right thing. Just like with cybersecurity, if you get hacked, no matter how small, you're supposed to report it. That's the responsible thing to do. You're supposed to report when you've had a compromise, when you've had a breach. And so the tie-in here goes more than just that one layer deep. And one other thing that sort of makes cybersecurity in your car, or cars in general, what makes them sort of a parallel, is that if you're driving but not looking at where you're going, not paying attention to the road, you're going to get into an accident and it's going to hurt. Just like with cybersecurity, if you're not paying attention to the logs and you don't understand what they're doing, you're going to have something happen and it's going to be bad. So it's not just about having the tools in place. It's also about having the alerting and the information flowing to you in a way that makes sense. You don't drive a car drunk, just like you don't operate cybersecurity without knowledge. That sort of behavior that's one of the things that's really hard to communicate, is that it's not just about incorporating the tools. It's about watching the information come across and finding out the alerting. and drawing conclusions based on what's going on with the data. One of the things that we implement in cybersecurity is called a SIEM, and SIEM is basically a log aggregation system, and can it can provide you with all of the information about what's going on within your environment, and have you alerted when specific conditions are met. And SIEM stands for, it's SIEM, Security Information and Event Management. And so the way that a SIEM works is it pulls in data from everywhere, pulls in data from all the different aspects of the security stack. It gets logs from your servers, gets logs from your firewalls, gets data from your antivirus, your EDR, your MDR. It gets data from your email platform. It gets data from your email filter. It gets data from all of these different endpoints, and it aggregates it into a single area. And one of the things that is a really interesting concept is to tie in all of those logs. So that way you see an operation on a computer where somebody clicks on an email. That email you see backtraced to where it came from, and then you see the IP addresses associated with that, and then you see those IP addresses associated with other relational things within that have happened in the past. And so you can kind of see where, okay, I see an attacker where they sent the email, and then I see them get into my network, and then I can see where they went from there. And that's important. It's really important to find all that information out when you're doing an investigation or forensics work. And so a lot of this stuff can help with defense. Anyways, bring this back to the original point. A SIEM can help you pull in all this information and identify what is important and what's not. But you need somebody to set up and be watching and looking and understanding what the data says. Just like you need to have somebody driving your vehicle who understands how to drive it, who knows what the lines mean, who knows what turn signals mean, who knows what stop signs means, and all the different other communicative things that we do when driving, that we have when driving. Because I don't know if anybody else has ever ridden with somebody who is just learning to drive and decided that, oh, it's a good idea to put them on the highway. That can be scary as shit because they don't understand all of the different things that are going on. As an American driving around on our highway system, I basically don't have to consciously think about all of the different signs that I'm getting. But that's because I've been driving for so long. And you think about somebody who is just starting to drive, who's somebody who doesn't know what the signs mean, doesn't know how to anticipate somebody shifting lanes or anticipate somebody trying to merge. And so they're having to pay attention to all of this information for the first time, and they're getting it they don't know what information is useful or not. So they are overloaded. And can end in tragedy, or it can end in a wreck. And just like with cybersecurity and a SIEM, with all of that data being fed to you, you need to have somebody who can see that information, who can identify what is good to pay attention to and what isn't, needs to be a concern and what isn't. All that information can be useful because there is such a thing as false positives. False positives are identified as anything that could potentially be malicious or could potentially be unwanted and actually isn't. For example, false positive in malware detection would be something like, I don't know, the Ask toolbar. I don't know why people install this stupid thing on their computers. It's adware. All it does is serve you ads, but people like to install it. And so, I'll get a flag for it, and it's called a PUP, potentially unwanted program. And 9 times out of 10, I'll just uninstall it because it's trash. There's no reason to have it. You're getting served more ads. I'm sure Ask hates for me to tell everybody this, but you're just getting ads. It's ads everywhere. You don't need it. So anyways, that's a false positive because if there's somebody who actually wants it and they installed it legitimately, they're like, I really like this Ask toolbar. It does things for me that I really like. Cool, that's on them. I'll let them have it. False positive, whatever. I'll ignore it for the rest of my life. I don't care. But the false positive, if you don't know it's a false positive and you have to then go investigate time after time after time, you lose your ability, you lose your effectiveness. And so you need somebody to understand that. somebody to be able to tell what's false positive. What you need that information. Just like when driving, you need to know what's safe when a car is passing you. You need to know how to be able to react and things like that. So having this information, having somebody driving who understands how to drive is key. And there are good drivers and there are bad drivers, just like there are good security people and there are bad security people. That's just how people are. You have different skills and different skill sets. So the key thing to think about when relating cybersecurity and driving and vehicles is that when an aspect of a vehicle when an aspect of cybersecurity is considered on its own, just like an aspect of a vehicle is considered on its own, it can seem useless, like seatbelts. 1920s, people didn't want seatbelts. There was huge public outcry against car manufacturers including seatbelts in their cars. The public opinion was, you can't tell us what to do. If we wanted safety restraints, we would buy them ourselves. Keep that out of our cars. It's unnecessary expense. And that is the same thing we face in cybersecurity. And a vulnerability management system might seem useless on its own, but you have to take that in the aggregate of your entire environment. So in such a way that if an attacker gets in and they're able to leverage an exploit, what does that look like in my environment? And so, like I said, there are vulnerabilities that exist and are only a problem if somebody is hands-on keyboard on a computer or directly on the network, or they need to have very specific things happen in order to exploit that vulnerability. The reason why you patch that vulnerability, the reason why you remediate it, is not because you absolutely are paranoid that vulnerability is going to be exploited. You don't remediate it because you're sure it's going to get exploited. You should remediate it because it doesn't matter if they're going to exploit it or not. It exists in your environment, and you have no idea when or where somebody might get in. You have to plan for somebody to be able to bypass all of your security features. You have to plan for that. You have to understand that. That's why you have a business continuity plan. It's why you have cybersecurity insurance. It's why you build a mature cybersecurity framework so that you, as the business owner, or you as a cybersecurity professional, or you as the data custodian, can feel confident that your data is protected. You build this so that you have a plan. And if somebody were to get into your environment, you have the ability and you know that they weren't able to exploit this one aspect and they weren't able to leverage it. And that's why we do these things. And they can seem excessive and silly and just a waste of time looking at it piece by piece. But again, in the aggregate, it will help protect you. It will help keep you safe and secure, and the environment and your environment static, because that's what we want. We want to make sure that your triad, your cybersecurity triad, confidentiality, integrity, availability, we want to make sure all three of those are protected at all times. Anyways, this has been the I Teach Myself podcast. I'm Matthew Miniman. I will post all of my sources in the show notes. If you have any questions, email me at matthew@iteachmyself.com. Otherwise, have a great day.